What counts as a good year for entertainment varies from person to person. Video games are no exception. Some point to 2001, the onset of the 6th generation, and the moment 3D gaming got some serious upgrades. Others look to the onset of grand sequels like 2009 and 2011. There's one year that trumps all of these. 2007, at least in my eyes, remains the best year in gaming history. I was 13 at the time, with the PS3 having launched in the UK on March 23rd. It was a truly exciting time to be into gaming, with developers pushing their visions into a new, more widespread phase. To start, let's set the scene. Leading up to 2007, how was gaming viewed by the wider masses? Simple toys for children, the domain of nerds in their mothers' basements? Some of these stereotypes still persist today, but back then they were much more widespread. In a lot of ways, the take-up of gaming and its entrance into the mainstream was spurred on by Nintendo. Through the adoption of motion controls and appealing to all age groups, a substantial audience had already joined the masses in 2006. In the years that followed, we started to see game trailers popping up in cinemas and sales reaching heights we had never seen in previous decades. More than anything else though, a truly great year of gaming depends on the titles made. Something 2007 had in spades. No longer was gaming the hobby that general audiences turned their noses up at. From that point onwards, thousands would find themselves sucked into its world. Rather than slowing to a crawl like the 8th generation did in 2014, the 7th gen really hit its stride just 1 year into the cycle. All of the big three consoles had top tier releases that really showed off their overall strengths. We'll start with the Nintendo Wii. Fresh off its enormous success in December 2006, the big exclusives arrived, fully leveraging the system's functionality in the process. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption concluded a wildly popular trilogy, while also showcasing a new method of control for the first-person perspective. This triggered a slew of re-releases like Resident Evil 4 with pointer controls, as well as bridging the gap between arcade cabinets and home consoles. House of the Dead and Time Crisis, among other light gun favourites, would find their way into the home over the next few years. This was followed up by Super Mario Galaxy, the highest rated release of 2007, and a platformer that revitalised the genre, proving enormously successful to both hardcore and casual players alike. It all came down to Nintendo delivering on their first-party efforts, something they've always been great at, no matter the console generation. Following close behind, the Xbox 360 had been working to put aside its troubles with the Red Ring of Death. Even with this critical error, Microsoft only needed one AAA exclusive in 2007. We all know what it was: Halo 3. This monster of a game was the best-selling release in the US that year, the pinnacle of hype and anticipation up to that point. Yet this was also a case where a game's success transcended the format and spilled onto the wider masses. As a franchise, Halo had been in the public eye before, but in this case the excitement levels went a step further. When it arrived on September 25th, the final chapter in Bungie's trilogy was such a phenomenon that many film studios believed it contributed to weaker attendance in movie theatres. Gaming had challenged the box office in a big way, which spoke to the medium's ascension throughout the year. In addition, Halo 3 would also bring in a suite of community features that would direct the set lists of shooters going forward, most notably saved films and map sharing. In a sense, the title was a precursor to larger gaming tournaments and streaming platforms like YouTube Gaming and Twitch. Both of these have become ubiquitous in the modern market. While the PlayStation 3 was arguably the weakest of the trio, it still had a share of titles that laid the groundwork for the system's rise. Uncharted: Drake's Fortune introduced us to not just an action-packed series, but a more cinematic direction for Naughty Dog that would drive storytelling going forward. The heavier use of cutscenes and focus on more serious storylines may not have resulted in success for every game, but the push towards hiring talented voice actors and designing more grandiose narratives would grow more common over time. Warhawk gave the system its first smash hit in the online space, and Ratchet & Clank Future: Tools of Destruction continued an already popular franchise with a stunning set of visuals to match. The fifth release from Insomniac Games was notable for bringing gaming animation up to the same level as the best filmmaking studios. Comparisons with Pixar and other companies were widespread, demonstrating another milestone for the medium. The console didn't have a true system seller yet, but it certainly wasn't a slouch either. Despite the ridicule the console had received, This trio of games proved that the system did have much more to offer than giant enemy crabs and an oversized price tag. The PC had more of a modest year, but its place at the top of the hardware pyramid resulted in a couple of key hits. The Witcher marked the debut of both CD Projekt Red and the Polish dark fantasy into the Western world. In many ways it was janky and tricky to get into, but it still laid a firm foundation. Little did we suspect it would go on to become one of the strongest properties in the genre, reaching the same heights as Lord of the Rings at the turn of the 2000s. On the opposite end, Crysis showed just how much graphical fidelity could be squeezed out of the platform. It was completely in tune with PC players and the kind of experience they look for on their supercharged rigs. This was a time when developers continued to up the technical ante and push the envelope of what the latest graphics cards could do. Nowadays, it feels like graphical horsepower is flowing in the opposite direction. Outside of major exclusives, the multi-platform releases also made a massive impression. Many wildly popular franchises made their debuts, and they too demonstrated what the latest generation could do. Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, BioShock, Rock Band, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, and the Orange Box, they all contributed to the industry's development in their own ways. Thanks to an absorbing story and setting, BioShock showed that games could reach an artistic level not seen in the days of pixels and 2D platformers. The same was true of Assassin's Creed, which launched a daring frontier for games set in historical periods, and a new degree of smoothness in how you navigated open worlds. Much like the aforementioned Uncharted, Mass Effect created a more immersive blueprint for RPGs going forward, with its dialogue wheel and a sense of player choice that carried through to future sequels. Enough can't be said about how Call of Duty 4 changed the game. It stood toe-to-toe with Halo 3 and made FPS titles a driving force in popular entertainment. The worldwide success of both the genre and the countless imitators in online multiplayer can all be traced back to this one title. Shifting to the party play scene, Rock Band took what Guitar Hero had done and drastically expanded it, becoming a highly successful product that brought in 4 players rather than 2. In 2007, we were sitting at a strong equilibrium between local and online play. In many ways, the two complemented each other, rather than favouring online only like we see nowadays. Last, but certainly not least, the Orange Box delivered a great value package that set the standard for all compilations to follow. With 5 games in one, it was the perfect gateway for players to get into the Half-Life series, and the first time Valve had fully expanded into the console scene. Other events throughout the year may not have achieved critical acclaim, but they represented greater shifts within video games. Mario and Sonic, previously fierce rivals, teamed up for the first time in the Olympic Games tie-in. Online storefronts were also beginning to warm up, with releases like Psychonauts, Super Stardust HD, and Geometry Wars all arriving as digital-only titles. On top of all that, even the older consoles had their moment in the spotlight, most notably with God of War 2 on the PlayStation 2, and a flurry of releases for the Nintendo DS, including Mario Kart, The World Ends With You, and Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. All of these games are still highly regarded to this day, and showed that both platforms still had plenty of life left in them. Compare that to today, where hardware cycles have slowed, and older systems are generally treated as an afterthought when it comes to ports. In the midst of all these successes, the bad games were simply struck down by low review scores and forgotten about. Before the industry grew fat with cash throughout the 2010s, the focus was squarely on making great games and earning the support of both fans and newcomers alike. So why is 2007 the best year in gaming history? Because it represents a crossing over point for the entire industry, one we're very unlikely to see again. It was the moment that video games stopped being a niche product and took their place alongside films, music, and other mass media. Perceptions, ambitions, and excellent titles all aligned to create the ultimate leap forward. There really was something for every type of player that year. It was also a springboard for countless properties that would only surge in popularity as time went on. Other major moments like 2009 and 2011 owe their success to what 2007 started. Today, in 2022, gaming is more profitable than ever, but it's also taken a gargantuan downturn. On the creative side, overworked developers, greedy publishers, and shareholders, alongside abusive workplace practices, are wrecking many livelihoods. On the consumer side, genres and franchises have started to blend together in pursuit of top dollar. Innovation is confined to the indie scene, and very few risks are taken in the AAA side. When talking about gaming milestones now, it's no longer about dramatic leaps in hardware or the next great idea. Instead, we're often talking about all the ways a slimy publisher can rip the community off. Here's hoping that somehow the industry can turn itself around and return to its golden years. Thanks for watching. Hard to believe it's been 15 years since gaming took its place among other entertainment titans. Where do you think the industry is going from here? Is there any way it can pull itself out of the fire? Stick your thoughts in the comments below. You can follow my blog and channel at the links in the description.